Welcome everyone back to Ford Operating Base Lake Fork. I am Greg Hill. I'm your host of your fishing show today. This will be your Lake Fork Fish Report ending on May the 27th of 2021. So Lake Fork has been through a lot of weather changes in the last 10 days since I've done this report. We had a ton of rain. We had the water level coming up almost a foot, like a 0.9 feet high. And it's all the way back down to the pool now, over 10. Now look, they've had the gates running pretty much full blast for about the last, I guess, almost like 10 days. We had rain after rain after rain. The ground was saturated. There was a lot of water coming into the lake. The fish were kind of moving up in the shallow water, and I'll get to that. But now the pool's back down to the normal level. It's and it's fishing well. It was pretty tough today. Caught a bunch of small fish, but I'll get to that in my fish report later. But with the water going up and the water going down, the fish were able to kind of get back in a lot of areas. It was kind of hard to get them for the shallow fish. They're really up in the deep buckbrush back in the back, and you can fish shallow for them. And then I'll talk about fish report. I was fishing on points, trying to fish in there where they can't get as far back up in these areas. It kind of rules out some water you can fish, I think. But now the water's come back down. And now it's kind of the normal level. There's grass growing everywhere. The big thing is, the question is, how everybody has is there any spawn fishing going on? For me, there has been. I caught a bedfish just 2 days ago. I didn't see a lot. I went to area that I usually kind of the last spawning areas. But look, we just had a full moon. It could be the last wave, the kind of stragglers. There were some fish that I saw in the shallow waters today. I'm not really sure if they were spawning or not, but there was definitely a bedfish 2 days ago because I caught it. It was a male buck. And it didn't have any blood on its tail, so it's kind of a fresh fish. But let's just talk about what's going on with the lake, and then what you can expect maybe over the next week. So the weather looks like it's going to start clearing up a little bit. We had weather today that was sunny, then it was cloudy. We didn't have any rain. It's one of the first days we hadn't got rained on in a little bit. We had a huge storm last night that came through. It finished up, about probably 6 o'clock this morning, 5 to 6:30 in the morning, or 5 o'clock to 5:30 in the morning. And it kind of just finished out in the rain. But I thought we were gonna get some rain today, but we didn't. And fished shallow, fished all over the place today, and didn't catch as many fish today. Caught all the fish really shallow today. A couple deep bites, but really shallow fish and jerk baits and stuff. So I'm going to go over what I kind of been catching on in the last 10 days. And I'm trying to talk about patterns that I'm going to look at. And this is kind of looking like back last year, looking at the time and kind of seeing what's going on for the next period. Look, the shad spawn is still going on out on some of the points. The thing that's changed this year that you can't really see the shad spawn as much unless you really get up there and look. There's not that many birds out here at the lake right now. A lot of the herons, I think, it seems to me, there's not as many here, and maybe the freeze killed a bunch of them. But last year you could kind of go down the lake and really look to see where there's a lot of herons, blue herons and white herons. They're just not out here. There's not as many out here, so you can't rely on that to kind of help you look at exactly where those shad were up shallow. This morning we were leaving out. This morning it was only like one fish, but he was just over and over and over again going in and getting some shad on some point. But he was the only one there. And there was shad flickering all over the point. You could see him up on the bank. And then, yesterday when I was fishing, I had a bunch of fish following the shad, following the baits, back to the boat. So there's definitely a shad spawn going on places. You just kind of have to look around and look for the points. It is, okay, so shad spawn fishing is definitely going on. Look, I'll show these lures I'm going to use. The other pattern you can go out right now is this post spawn bluegill attack pattern that the bass like. It's really, remember, it's get even time for the bass right now. So if you're going into these shallow water areas where there's a lot of grass and the fish had been spawning and now the bluegill are spawning, you go in there with a tube bait, and I don't have one out right now, but if you watch my video in my Instagram here from just a couple days ago, you'll see a good picture of one. If you go get a tube bait, old school, I'm still throwing like some Denny Browner tube baits I have, and then you like a green pumpkin, and then dye that last quarter to 3/8 of an inch of the tail with a chartreuse, and you can look, you weed it. It's Texas rigged. It'll get through that grass. You just kind of hop it through the grass, and when that little little chartreuse tail flicks through there, those bass are going to think it's, you know, a bluegill, and they're going to hit that thing. You can go around and use your side imaging to see the bluegill beds. If you'll go back and watch a video I had from last year, and I'll try to get a new one when I get some new video of my side imaging and stuff. But look, I had a really good video I did last year talking about the bluegill bait, the bluegill spawn pattern, and patterning those fish, and trying to use your side imaging to find them. So go back and look at my videos on YouTube, and you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. But the other bait you can throw near those beds, look, you can throw this basically a jig. This is got a pointy nose one because I was throwing near some timber. But look, this is in the bluegill color pattern. You throw it near and hop it around where those bluegill beds are, and you know, you should be able to pick up some good fish doing it. I haven't caught as much fish because I just started doing it, so I just got into it. I haven't been doing it yet because I was still kind of doing my spawn fishing and doing the point fishing. I'm just transitioning kind of where I was last May, which would some shad spawn bite in the morning, then maybe go do some bluegill bed fishing, and then transition out to the deeper water. So we'll see how that goes. But it's been, you know, I haven't been fishing the beds that much right now. I'm just getting started on it, so I've just caught a couple small ones. So shad spawn in the morning. What can you throw? Like, look, you can throw underspins. You know, just a swim bait, underspin, and it's just, you know, this is a 4-inch, you know, basically Envision bait. You can throw the crankbaits in the shad pattern. So any kind of short bait like this dives down to 10 feet for deeper, but you can throw the shallower ones like they're running, you know, 2 or 3 feet. I'm throwing, and that's what we caught fish on today, and it's been producing almost every day for me, is a heading, just a walk around. This is the 4-inch model. It's a shorter one. You'll catch more fish on it, but they might not be as big. If you throw the big saltwater series, the big one, look, you're going to weed out a lot of fish, but you're going to get a bigger bite. So, you know, take the chance doing that. The other bait that's been paying off for me is the jerk bait. So you can see, just, you know, it's just a jerk bait. You know, there's a couple, you can run it. This is a really shallow one. This one runs about 1.5 feet deep. You know, and I'm working it pretty shallow up on the points. It's important to find the wind-blown banks. Like today, it kind of died off on us. We had some wind this morning, and then it died off. The wind died off after that storm pushed through, and then we didn't have any wind, so we had transition to better fishing. But this is a great bait to throw out in those wind-blown banks. And if you want to fish just a little deeper, just get one's got a little big old bill on it, get it down to 2 or 3 feet range, and work it deeper across there also. The other bait that I'm getting some bites on are just it's a big swim jig, just a white swim jig, you know, with a longer tail on it. So, and then of course chatterbaits. So this chatterbait is the stealth blade. You know, you can see it's got the clear blade on it. I've just got a small little kicker tail on this one, and if you can take a look at the tail, I've got it trimmed down a little bit. Now, if you trim it down, what happens is you want to try to match the beat of the blade with the kick of the tail. So if you're throwing a bait, if you're throwing a chatterbait out that's got like a jackhammer, it's got a slower beat to it, you want to have a slower kicking tail. You know, you don't want this doing this and this one going like that. And then of course with the stealth, it's got a faster beat to it, so you want a tail that's faster. You want to try to match where that fish is following the thumps. He gets up there and he sees something. In my opinion, it looks like it's kind of kicking the same speed. So play around it. You know, maybe it doesn't make that big of a difference. I think it can, because I think if the fish come up, and you'll see, I mean, I've been fishing with one that I had forgot to trim the tail with, and I see in my electronics, I'll see the fish chase it and get up to it, and they kind of turn around. If I go and trim the tail at 1 or 2 times, I've caught a fish right away. So maybe that's the reason. Maybe it was just me keep throwing back in the same spot. But you know, look, I believe in some luck and not as many coincidences. So we'll see how that works out. But that's what I do, so that's what I recommend. So getting back into some deeper fishing. Like we threw some DDs today for the first time, really. It's only the second time I've thrown them this season. We didn't catch a fish on one today. We had fish following it, and they would not hit it at 2 places. So I really couldn't see that. Starting to throw, you know, getting into throwing the big shaky heads. So, you know, 10-inch power worms. You know, you can multiple colors, red shad, you know, the plum, shark, you know, basically like green pumpkin. you can just play around with the colors basically. But look, you know, I'm throwing on these big shaky heads, you know, get it down in there, try to get that tail kicking up there and working near those brush piles. I'm throwing near the crappie brush piles, and you know, again, I like to find crappie brush piles that have crappie in it that are 6 inches or less. You know, that's just me. I keep a little spinning around with the crappie jig on it sometimes. So if I find one and I'll see how big they are, I'll throw that down there. If they're 6 inches or less, then I'll look around for the bass and try to catch the bass. If they're bigger crappie, I don't mess around with it because, you know, look, I might mark it as a crappie spot and go crappie fishing there, but I'm not going to bass fish there because those bigger crappie, you know, they're just too big for the bass to eat. I mean, but those 6 inches or less, I think those are like, you know, that's like a sweet treat to some bass. You know, they love the crappie on this lake. I'm trying to think, coming back during the weeks on a couple guide trips, that so through some grass. I didn't show the frog yet, but you know, catching fish on frogs, 2 colors, you know, green ones, white ones. I'm throwing the popper frogs. So we got some bites on popper frogs. And then even during the day, you know, going out and using the live scope to look in some trees and kind of scoped out. I had a customer caught a really nice fish. We scoped it out. I was like, look, there's 2 or 3 good fish in this tree. We backed up. Matter of fact, I threw in there because we were fishing, and I was kind of showing him, and one hit it. One came up and hit it. And then then my customer, he threw out there again real quick. He stuck his rod in the water, went right through on the very next cast, and the fish hit it. So that was the best fish we had on that trip. So it was pretty nice. I have to say that the fishing has been tougher in the last week because of, I mean, I've had some smaller fish. I had one really good day 2 days ago, and you know, caught fish. I caught fish all the way from a bedfish to 20 feet of water. And I didn't show a picture of a flutter spoon, but you know, flutter spoons are already starting to take place. So I'm throwing the 6-inch flutter spoons. I'm not throwing the big ones. You know, I know some guys are out there throwing the really big ones. I just don't throw those a lot, and you know, maybe I should be a little bit and kind of experiment with it more. But you know, the flutter spoon bite is definitely coming. So when a day like today, when we have this almost no wind, you can get right on top of the fish and go down there and throw it. You know, look, if you get out that fish, that tree out in front of you, if I see some trees, I'll throw it out over trees, like maybe it's 40 feet deep, 20-foot trees, or 30 feet deep, you know, 20-foot trees. You can throw that flutter spoon. If you got your live scope system, you can throw it out there. It'll flutter right down on top of that tree. If you don't have a live scope system, you're going to have to just know what the depth of the trees, because the live scope helps you, because you throw it out there, it'll flutter down, get it right to the top of that tree, and then you pull it up, and you let it flutter down right to the top of that tree, and then pull it up. So that's how I'm working mine. I got surprised. I mean, I lost an 8-pounder. It was a big fish. I mean, it looked like an 8-pounder. It was bigger. It could have been bigger. But I lost it. Actually had it at the side of the boat. I was trying to get my GoPro camera out to get some video of it real quick and bring it in or getting in the net, and it got off. So I should have just got it in the boat and then taken a good picture of it, and you know, would have had a good story about that. But I had the sad story is that I let it get off. I let it get off right at the boat when I could have just easily netted the thing. I had it right there. But count the other a 5 and a 4 are pretty much doing the same thing. Going to areas that were in 20 to 25 feet. They were right off the side of a creek. There was a lot of bait fish there. There were a lot of white bass down there, and you're throwing this big flutter spoon down there. And I was letting it go down through the schools of the bait fish, and let it go almost to the bottom, and then almost really working it just a couple feet up and a couple feet up here. And then, you know, the fish came, that big fish, it just came off the bottom. I didn't even see it. I didn't see that fish. I was actually working for another fish, and all of a sudden, man, this big one just came out and hammered the thing. So there must have been a bunch of them down there kind of harassing these schools of bait fish, and this one came up and hit it. So we're definitely getting into that warmer time of season. It's been warmer, you know, getting out and getting on those offshore humps, using your electronics, and I'll talk about that in another video of how I use my electronics trying to find the fish. But you know, look, those are one other bait that I talk about here. You know, look, you can start drop shotting, and you can start throwing some wacky rigs. You know, this is a wacky rig. You know, I know people, I tell stories that, you know, a lot of people, hey Greg, it's a Ned rig. Well, I mean, I think I was fishing a nail in the front of a weight like this long before I think anyone named Ned called it a Ned rig. So I just called it, I just say I put a nail in the front of it, and it basically just gives a different fall as it comes through. Because look, you can throw that down there on spinning. You can swim it, kind of swim it through sideways, or you can let it go down the bottom and kind of drag it. I like this kind of semi-wacky rig, you know, with it. And be careful which kind of hooks you use with this wacky rig. I don't use the exposed, and I don't use just the titanium with metal. I have these ones that have a little plastic, you know, hook on there, and I found them to be the best because I had one brand that I kept losing fish on. My customers losing fish on, and man, I threw them all. I threw them away. And I just got these now, and these have been very successful using those. So I'm just looking over my baits. You know, look, I didn't talk about chatterbaits. You throw chatterbaits, multiple colors. You can throw those chatterbait in the bluegill colors around the beds. Throw that around there too. You know, I'm throwing more shad chatterbaits in the mornings. I haven't been throwing any chatterbaits around there. But a swim jig, you can throw a swim jig, you know, through that grass in the bluegill colors also. There's all kinds of stuff you can do with the bluegill. Now, I did have a crankbait and I have it out. But, you know, look, a tiny crankbait, you know, maybe 2.5 inches, smaller crankbaits. I'm throwing those through the bluegill beds also. I haven't had any bites on them yet, but it was a solid performer last year. But I'd start to recommend to kind of look at that. Look at some type of bait that you can use to bring through. And then Senkos, you know, the big 6-inch Senkos, big ones, thick ones. Take those Texas rig, throw them in the grass, throw it where these bluegill beds are, and work those through the bluegill beds also, and that'll help you out. Okay, so to finish up, all I'm gonna say is that I had a tough fishing trip today. We caught about 7 or 8 fish, and they weren't small. I think the biggest one was up to 2 pounds. So it was tough fishing out there today. It was kind of a grind once this weather system pulled through, and we were, you know, in the sun and then the clouds, and we went from shallow to deep, back to shallow, and ended up catching shallow as most of our fish for the day. And we had one deep bite, but my customer just didn't get a hook set on it. So, you know, sometimes, but look, Lake Fork is one of those lakes that, I mean, it's a hard lake to fish because there's so much pressure on the lake. But look, you got to change your ways. Like on day to day, we fished a ton of different lures, a ton of different ways, different techniques, and we finally caught some at the very end. We caught some in the morning and we caught some at the end. But in between time was really tough today. We really struggled, so that's really tough doing. I think if you go out and try to focus on the deep fish, we were doing that. Just had a hard time. Had a hard time today. But look, I'm looking forward to fishing out this next week. If you're looking for some guided fishing trips, you're looking for a place to stay, make sure to go to my website, www.FOBLakeFork.com. You can look at my Airbnb. You can look at dates I have for, you know, guided fishing trips. Send me a message with your dates that you want, and let's get some booked up. Okay, so let's summarize for the week. I talked about the shad spawn fishing in the morning. Then I talked about, you know, possibly doing some grass fishing and some bluegill bed fishing with the right type of lures I talked about. The deep fishing is starting to take place. So we're going to get to the point where, you know, I'm throwing those shaky head, big 10-inch worms. I'm throwing dragging jigs, you know, through the deep spots. You know, you're throwing football head jigs. You're throwing the straight ones near timber. You can start jigging flutter spoons. So look, there's so many techniques that are starting to happen. The fish, in my opinion, are still kind of spread out. There's some fish that are still shallow and they're still spawning. There's some fish that are post-spawners. Probably no more pre-spawners left, I don't think. And then the fish are moving out to their deeper haunts already. I'm not sure, I didn't go down to look at today, but 3 days ago I was down in the southern part of the lake, and right about 30 feet across the whole lake, it seemed to look like an inversion layer. So, you know, let's see what it is. I'll go down there again probably tomorrow or the next day to check it out again. But if that's true, there is a temperature inversion that's already forming down in one part of the lake, and we'll see how that might affect the fishing, you know, down there. So I'm Greg Hill. That's your fishing report for, you know, the end of the May the 27th here. And look, I look forward to bringing you out here and take you fishing. So come on out. What's going on, guys? Where are the fish? Where are they? Where's the fish? Over there? Oh, over there. Where's the fish? Over here? Or over here? Okay. All right, thanks for the help. Yeah, you're welcome.